the topic is interesting. India's tech economy boom, what lies ahead. But if we contextualize it a little bit about what is happening, the biggest newsmakers right now are again from the tech space for a different reason. And we know what the reason is. But nevertheless, that does not mean the boom factor that we associate with tech startups is not growing. Of course, there's a phase, India is still the third or the fourth largest, market in startups. We continue to grow. We continue to have the biggest startups. But then let me put a little bit of backstory before I dive into this topic, starting with you, Rohit. We've seen the real boom part at one stage, and now we are still seeing the boom, but in a different context. We read it. As journalists, we understand what is going on in the startup world, but from somebody who does it day in and day out, how do you explain what is happening in the startup world, especially led by tech startups? What is the growth prospect, right? What is the boom story right now?
That's a very good question, and I think we have seen so many stories, and for the last 3 years, it's been a very much a roller coaster ride. I don't know how much you know about us. So we as a company, we are headquartered in New York. Obviously, we started the company in 2008, and now we're expanding in India, really. So we are like sort of a startup in India, but not really a startup. But I can tell you the journey, what is happening in India. So I think what has happened in India is 3 things. One, obviously, the tech talent is world class. Secondly, the government has done a phenomenal job in creating digital infrastructure. And the third thing is that, the advent of cheap money led to a lot of this, funding boom. Now, and I think a lot of people mischaracterize this funding boom that it is an actual boom. So actually it's not a boom right now. So we are at the end of the day, India is a $2,200 per capita economy. So as you were asking, that why only 50 million people, and there's a reason, because at $2,200 per capita income, that's the number of people who will be able to afford these tech, services, whether food delivery, whether your online, booking of travel, whether it's, stock brokerage, and other things. And what has happened is that, global VCs, because of China shutting down, and we should thank China also for that, is that, so much of money came into India over the last, 2-3 years because Fed had just, totally, lowered the interest rates, and then US government printed close to, between Fed and US government, they printed close to $9 to $10 trillion in less than a year. So that's like 3 times India's GDP, and so like imagine that kind of money just flowing in. China shut down. India is large market in terms of population. And most of the American companies today have a lot of exposure to India. They have a lot of big tech centers, there's a booming Indian American community, people like us who have like I have a center in Noida in Pune, we employ 600 people. So we understand India well, so for us, coming from US and start putting money here, or VCs where there are a lot of Indians also, it's very easy compared to going to, some other parts of the world, like say Indonesia, which is also, doing pretty well right now. So I think that happened. I think now what has happened because of that is that, so there are few positive things in this. I think what we have is actually a lot of people who have got that exposure and that taste of entrepreneurship, and also a lot of people who have now worked in these fast growing startups, so, and people have become very ambitious, they want to do startups, they want to scale, they want to do, things that they couldn't do it in the past. I think the challenge has been that there has been lack of focus and discipline. And that happens because of 2 reasons. Most of the VCs are also in such a great rush to deploy money because they make money when they deploy money. And second thing is, unfortunately in India still the corporate governance standards are very poor. So a lot of people thought they got the money, they can go and spend money, they can do anything they want to do. And they were growing business, they were very loose controls. And
right.
Now a lot of these VCs have realized.
I have separate questions for all this, but largely you're saying that there are some systemic issues, that need to be addressed. While the boom is a reality, it is still there in some, it's manifesting in some ways, but there are challenges also. That's what you're trying to essentially point out, right?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to just say here is that, it's a great experience for a lot of people who have gone through this. This is a normal cycle, boom bust. US we see it every 4 or 5 years, so it's pretty common. Here we haven't seen this kind of an activity. So obviously boom will be followed by bust.
Right.
So I think that's great because
Right.
it has created the infrastructure for further growth.
Let me get in Kamalika here. Kamalika, what's your reading of the tag that we have for our market, often described with boom? What is it currently like?
So, the way I see it is that India's had a certain DNA so far. Actually, if you look at it till about maybe 15 years back, we weren't consumers of tech products yet, right? Therefore, a lot of tech that came out of India was very focused on other markets. Now, what has happened in the last 10, 12, 15 years is that we've become consumers of tech. Therefore, tech that's focused on India as a consumer economy, tech that's focused on the B2B India consumption, that has really come up in the last 10 years, right? And that's what makes us, good, because so far we were deploying talent on taking a cost advantage, but not really deploying that talent on creating products that created convenience, lasting value for consumers, for customers, and that's what you're seeing right now. And that's the real boom, right? So even today, if you look at it, the products that have come out of India or whatever tech has been built out of India, even in the last 10 years, still focuses on the top tier of 30, 35 million customers, right? But the real consumer economy that you're thinking of, which is the large numbers of India, actually exists in the next tier of people. But the products that can address that segment of consumers is very different from what has come out today. So I believe that we've had one boom to address the 30 million. The next boom has got to come for products which is for the next set of India. And those products are very different from what exists today.
So we have become more inward looking compared to what we were
Earlier.
looking, providing solutions outside.
Yeah.
That's a one drastic shift in this boom,
Yes.
right? Satyajeet, your initial thoughts on how is the startup tech-led businesses, how are they navigating the current market forces right now? What has been your experience?
So I think, when we look at a funding winter that we talk about so often now, I think it's very important to have a long-term view on things. We are in a boom economy. I think India is the future to build for going forward. But one needs to be cognizant to take a long-term 10 to 15-year view and not look at it as in cycles of 1 to 2 years. And when you have that perspective, for example, I think we're being very unfair when we say that, okay, we had this digitalization, but we're only catering to such a small audience. Or, we had this, but the valuations were so inflated, and we had about 2 to 3 companies that went public, which did not perform that well. I think it's important to understand that our digital journey has been about 5 to 6 years old, whereas if we compare it to a couple of developed nations, their digital journey started about 30 to 40 years back. And what we see today is mature ecosystems in the developed world, which we compare to a maturing ecosystem in our world. So let's take a 15 to 20 year horizon on this, and I think India looks like a
fair
great, story.
Playground. Create a fair comparison, not a unrealistic comparison.
Yeah, I think we're
right?
comparing our step 1 to
Right.
probably US's step 5,
Right.
which I think is unfair. So let's give ourselves that much amount of time. Let's give ourselves a 10-year. We are the biggest consumer base. We have started digitalization. If you look at about 380 million UPI users today, I don't think anyone could have really seen that kind of adoption even 5 years back.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think also, the way we look at boom and bust factors need to be revisited. That's also your point, right? We don't need to see it like, happening in this quarter and compare quarterly. It should be much more spread in that sense, right?
Correct. I think that's where the media is going at, funding in first quarter of this year compared to funding in first quarter
My
of
next
last
question
year.
is on that.
I don't think we can actually look at when we're talking about an economy and when we're talking about a long-term play. I don't think it's fair to say, take such a micro view on things. Right. Let's take a 10 to 15-year view, and I think it looks like a great place to be at.
Perfect. Varun, your thoughts on India's tech economy boom, and should boom only be in terms of the money part?
Got it. So I'll give you a very different view on this, and I'll make it interesting for you. India has never been a leader in any sense in anywhere for now. We have always been a cockroach economy,
By the way,
and
something
startups are
new to
always
hear. Yeah, I mean,
Indian startups are always cockroach startups. They don't die even if there is a single entrepreneur left in the company, right? So as far as comparing to US companies is concerned, we are very much in a very nascent stage. What is the size of Indian tech economy? Like 240 billion, 250 billion. US SaaS is 1.2 trillion, right? So India has never been in that stage where we should compare ourselves to any kind of that kind of economy. What Satyajeet was saying. So I don't think, and all these terms, funding winter, boom, bust, is all US driven. India has never considered those terms when it comes to real on ground execution. अभी भी इंडिया में दो लोगों की कंपनी चलती रहती है, बंद नहीं होती. US में then it becomes a problem if there are regulations, there are regulatory issues, then there are HR issues and all of that. So if those ups and downs are typically US phenomena, India has always been like a heartbeat, just growing at a certain pace. So I don't think that it is fair comparison in any sense, anywhere, to compare India to any economy, not just US, any economy outside India. And we will survive all kinds of busts and booms and all of that. India कभी नहीं मरता इन चीज़ों में, हम चलते रहते हैं.
One interesting point is that the startup, the vocabulary that you use in the startup world is US
All
driven.
US. It's all US.
Because you won't say that the startup culture was not here. When you had a Marwari or a Gujarati starting business 50 years back, that was a startup.
Absolutely.
He got seed fund from his dad. So the vocabulary is different. But since we exist in this milieu, we have to use that. That's my next question with you, Rohit, that the way we look and evaluate startups, unfortunately, is we look at their quarterly growth. We compare them with the previous years. And if you see India this year, very low funding, maybe startups got 2 billion in first quarter of 2023, 75% low. Second, we play big on that we have the population and we have the adaptability to kind of, use tech. Our population will quickly use the apps and they'll do, as we have seen in the UPI case. But if you look at numbers, Zomato, 1.5 billion population, 50 million users. So is there a myth around what you guys are telling VCs also? I mean, how does it come together?
No, I think there are 2 points just to comment on what is a two people company. I think, see, the difference now with a Marwadi setting up a company 50 years back is the startups are now associated with innovation. So if you see Israel, per capita income is like $60,000. It has no oil. It's all startups. It's all real startups, They do a real deep tech, kind of stuff. So a two-man company not having funding cannot do that. Let's face the facts. If you want to bring innovation, you want to bring change, then you need money, you need investment, you need brain power, and that's very important. So I think coming to your point, for Zomato, 50 million people, it comes back to the same point that, when our per capita income is $2,200, and yes, you're right, both VCs as well as, the entrepreneurs. So what happened with the Indian startup world is that last 3 years, it got totally dollarized. So everybody talks in dollars, nobody talks in rupees. So I raised 20 million, 30 million, my valuation is 100 million. So you feel like, I come to India very often, I'm in Bombay, every time I was talking to people, everybody was talking in dollars. I said, I'm in India or in US, or somewhere else. So now the key thing is that it has dollarized, and there's a reason, because 90% of the VC money till now has been coming from US. And it's so funny that, there's a lot of VC money which goes into US funds which are from, say, GCC and other parts of the world, and then it gets routed here, actually. So which is interesting part, that how the US dominates this, totally. So obviously we cannot, whether we like it or we hate it, that's what the reality is. Now coming to that point, what has happened is 2 things. So a lot of these VCs, who have come from, these are bachas, so they have just come back from US with a business school degree. They are not real entrepreneurs. So if you go to US and meet real VCs, the guys like, Mike Moritz or Doug Leone or Anderson and all these people, they've been entrepreneurs. So they have been in that ecosystem for last 30, 40 years. So they know what is boom, bust. The guys who have come here, actually they're in a job. So if you see most of these VCs, even the partners, they have a job. They're not entrepreneurs. And
They don't bring the sentiment of an entrepreneur. That's what you mean to say. And that's
they
why
don't have
we are seeing...
experience. They don't have experience of
Right.
an entrepreneur. They don't understand. And their only role was, okay, deploy as much money as fast as possible, hope that something will stick, and will become a hero out.
So the sentiment at play is far different than what the industry requires, right? That's what the
Very
problem is.
very few VCs in India have some real startup and entrepreneurial skill sets. There are companies from India, Zero, Dha, Zoho and all that, which have become very large without any funding also.
Right.
But the problem is most of these VCs are pushing entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs go and give them these big picture and like numbers which are just
Right.
out of the whack. And
Sorry, in the interest of
nothing
time,
happens.
I'll just request everyone to have just 2 minutes. Is Ish here? Ish Babbar? Yeah, please join us here. Please join us here on stage. Let me come to you, Kamalika.
Can I just add to his
Okay,
points?
okay.
You took two names. One is Zomato, one is funding. I sold my last company to Zomato, and I'm a Series A funded company, so I can comment on both of these points. Coming to this, that why India doesn't have a Zomato story which goes beyond 50 million. The answer is very simple. We only have 20 big cities in India, not beyond that. That's the major problem. In China, you have 200 cities like Delhi. So once you start anything, you have a captive audience which can actually order online. In India, beyond Jaipur, you have Jajjar. क्या ऑर्डर होगा वहाँ पर, राइट? तो प्रॉब्लम इज द इंडियन इकोनॉमी हैज टू
इंटरनेट भी नहीं चलेगा वहाँ पर.
हाँ, इंटरनेट भी नहीं चलेगा और वो डिलीवरी बॉय को पैसे भी नहीं देंगे. वो दे विल जस्ट टेक द फूड एंड नॉट इवन पे हिम. सो द प्रॉब्लम इज नॉट विद द स्टार्टअप. द प्रॉब्लम इज इंडिया हैज ओनली 20-30 big cities where things like this can work. Beyond that, there is no economy. They launched in 300 cities. What they had to do? They had to pull off, right? The reason is nobody orders online because घर पे बना हुआ खाना. Why will order online? We have to have cities, 200 plus, 300 plus cities, so that we talk about like 200 million people ordering and all of that stuff. Till that time, it's never going to happen.
Great. Kamalika, what do you make of this population not translating into users, VCs really cutting down on funding? What does it translate into for businesses? I mean, and how are businesses owners anxious because what they're seeing, what is happening in the marketplace? What is the big story, the hope story, the growth story from here on?
Sure. So, look, first, let's put some perspective to this, okay? I mean, the number of startups that die in any startup economy, only 0.9% startups actually succeed, right? And when you say succeed, they actually get to a point where they're capable of scaling, capable of growing beyond a certain level, right? And that has nothing to do with whether you have the consumers or not. It's also a question of how many companies come up and how many products can a consuming economy actually take, right? So a certain level of startup death is to be expected, and VCs do understand that. The challenge today is that there is PE ticket size investing happening with a VC risk model. And that's always a problem because you've got capital chasing businesses rather than businesses chasing capital, right? And that's the dichotomy
no
of the
longer the
current.
case now, huh?
There has to be a correction, right? Because at all points in time, good businesses get capital, businesses chase capital, and capital runs away from businesses, right? That's how it should work. Now, if you're talking about the consumer set, the challenge in India today is that there's a massive divide between what is, and there is a very nice article out there by somebody called Sajid Pai, who's talked about the Indus Valley, he characterizes it a certain way, where there's a category A segment of customers, which is 35 million in India. Beyond that, there's a 130 million, economy, which is tier B, which is mainly focused on providing services to tier A, right? And that economy's mindset, requirements, needs are drastically different from what is there in tier A. Now, if you take tier A products, which are about convenience, as Varun says, if I'm in tier 2 India, it's cheaper and more intuitive for me to actually cook food at home than to order online. If you take a business model which has 30 million and you say population is so much, therefore over a period of time, if I just grow this through Excel, it'll come out to 60 million, 80 million, 200 million, right? That's an Excel exercise. It doesn't translate into reality. And that is the challenge that none of the VCs have actually seen coming. And it's, it's fair. This is what boom and busts are about. 2008, the US economy collapsed because the housing crisis hit. They didn't see it coming, despite being a mature, sensible economy, right? So these things will happen because they're corrections in mindset, right? But if you really ask me, the challenge is that nobody today has focused on creating products that are specific to that segment. And you see some of them. You see products like Meesho come out because they actually target e-commerce or ordering behavior which is specific to that segment, different from how Tier 1 and Metro works. And therefore, there is value in those models, right? So it'll happen over a period of time. I actually agree with Satyajeet that, any economy is a 15 to 20-year time horizon.
Right.
It's
right.
not 5 years.
If you want to...
Yeah, I would like to add more from a perspective. I believe in India, we are at a stage where we are defining what is the right product fit for Tier 3, Tier 4 cities as of now. It's not one Bharat, right? I believe in the initial stage, what we really looked into was one product which was fitting across. And now is the era, now is the time, the kind of infrastructure changes which are really happening, the kind of support which we're really getting from the government as well. Specifically, I can talk about insurance. And in financial sector, the kind of Bharat stack availability which is there, we are far ahead of Europe. The products which are really coming in, the kind of insurance personalization which is really happening, is the next wave where we would start seeing businesses to boom. And I believe in last 3-4 years, the fundamental chase of creating a product for evaluation was going wrong, which is getting corrected right now. So completely agree. This is the stage for Bharat. From a growth perspective, in case right products will really start getting distributed in Tier 3, Tier 4 cities, there would be huge boom, there would be huge entrepreneurial spirit across which will take us to a different level.
Okay, Satyajeet, how are you preparing your business to what is happening around you to insulate it from a crisis, that kind of looks around, there's a lot of challenges around. So how have you taken a different course to insulate and stay ahead of all those, stories that we hear about what's happening in the startup world right now?
So I think if you're specifically talking about funding and funding in fintech, I think it has not been that bad for early stage startups as it has been for more mature companies, Series B onwards. Good, credible businesses, I think, are still getting funded in the early stages. Though we've had some corrections to do, we've had to, take a timeline where probably our runway was at 12 months. We've had to take some measures where we had to expand that up to 18 months. We've had to expand that up to 24 months. But other than that, when we also talk about 2 billion funding did happen in Q1, it's not that the funding has completely stopped. It's just probably funding cycles are longer. DD or decision making is taking slightly longer. But other than that, it's not that the funding has completely stopped. So I think one has to prepare for a longer runway. One has to prepare that it's not that they'd go out in the market to raise and probably money would be in the bank in about 2 to 3 months. These are cycles that we've seen in previous years, but I think that cycle has extended up to about 6 to 8 months. But other than that, companies which have merit, companies which have the potential, I do see them getting funded. Right. So I don't see that as a big challenge.
So, right, absolutely. Take on point is that meritocracy, merit-based businesses, which will not a Me Too-based business. I think there was, Rohit, I want to come to you and then I want to come back to you. There was a phase where every second guy has become a startup owner, and the barriers are so low. And of course, the VC spoils them with maybe large funding without maybe evaluating it much deeper. But now, do you think there's a certain course correction at play? How will it pan out from here? Second, what are your learnings from the big boys, so-called, who are going through a rough patch? What are the learnings from there? What is the course correction that has set in? As Satyajeet said that, funding won't dry out, it will be extended, periods will be extended. What does it mean for the quality of startups?
So I think two things. One, obviously, people now who want to do startup need to be really passionate about it. I think it had become a fashion in India. Everybody used to say, I want to do a startup. So anywhere you go, it's like, I want to do a startup. Like, why? Like, kind of stuff. So I think that's one thing, that if you're really passionate about it, you're trying to solve a big problem, or you're trying to, or really have that, mindset, then it's good. So I think that's good. I think Satyajeet's point of funding has not dried out. I think funding has dried out for most of the companies. So it's only out of 2 billion, if you see, 800 million went to PhonePe, actually. So my take on that is that, yes, while good businesses are still getting money in Series A, I think we have always seen that in normal cycle, Series B or Series B is the toughest, always to raise money. If you're in a normal cycle, not in a hyper cycle that we were. So I think that's going to happen. I think the third thing is now going to happen is that hopefully what they should do, they should also instill some sense in the entrepreneurs here. Because see, we as a country, what are we good at? Again, we have to build businesses in a very smart way, frugal way, and cost conscious way. That doesn't mean you don't invest money in right things. We obviously have to do that. But not in like marketing, like Baiju going and, taking the cricket team sponsorship, or, they were at the World Cup soccer in Qatar, actually. So that was not required, that was like not their market, the soccer market and all that. So I think that has to stop, that kind of indiscipline has to stop, and people have to focus on the fact that once they have raised certain amount of money and they are at a certain stage, let's say Series B or Series C, they need to have a clear path to profitability. Now they can always keep investing more money to build new products or gain more competencies. And if they lose money there, I think people are fine to fund them. But people don't realize when they say
Right.
Amazon was lost, is that Amazon became profitable very quickly in their core business. It was just the investments they were making
Right.
to grow the business that were their loss.
Absolutely. The
Exactly.
point taken here. Varun, I want to bring you here. Tell me what are the course corrections? And second, the startup world was going through its own, low barriers. Everybody wanted to. So what will happen now with the kind of, changes that are here? And what are your learnings from the collapse, if I may use this word in brackets, of the big boys?
Again, I'll give you a very interesting perspective to this. I also want Ish to pitch in because again, he's a late stage funding stage. We are in like a mid to early stage. No money has dried, to be very frank. Who do VCs take money from? LPs, mostly US LPs. It's all driven by them and their sentiment. Frankly, if funding was on a boom in 2022, it cannot suddenly stop in 2023. They still have decent enough money in their banks. The only thing is they are not investing because they have been told not to invest. That is the point. So all these cycles of funding, winter and all, is all driven by LPs who are sitting at the helm, and they are giving directions whether this is the right time to invest or not. And why do LPs have no interest in putting more money right now? Again, US Treasury, 6% interest rate being given to people, those which was like 0.5% or 1%, so now US government is giving more interest rate to normal people, right? They get 6%, why they want to invest in Indian companies? The funding winter will go away the day LP says, okay, now go and invest. Second day, you will see a big guy raising a $500 million check. That is going to happen. So they do have money in accounts. The only thing is they have been given instructions not to invest right now because there is no merit in investing right now. So those guys who are getting money are the ones who have been committed or at a survival stage. पैसे नहीं डालेंगे company मर जाएगी. So they are getting it, or an awesome business, बहुत अच्छी profitability है, उसको तो मिलेगा ही, वो that you can never stop. So I don't think this phenomena is driven by Indian entrepreneurs being profitable, not profitable,
They're doing
doing good
anything
or
wrong.
not good.
They are not
No.
doing anything wrong, is-
No, you will still
Right.
find no, sir. It
Okay.
is
Ish
true.
is a point here.
It is
okay.
true.
Yes.
Yeah, so I kind of have a mixed view on this. Easy money is off the table. Yeah, that was easy money, which was
Chला
there.
गया.
Easy money is off the table. Now, if I give a proposition, right? Let's think about a use case scenario. Yeah, we are making a business, and that business is giving you 5-time returns. You have ensured there is ROI, there is ROE, and you have also ensured that there is good governance. How many people in this room would invest. Huge
Most.
pool, most of us will do. And that's what's happening right now. As Indians, we always looked at fundamentals. Unit economy. Is the business going to make money? In case it will, people will invest. There's enough money.
Right.
So we are going back to basics. I think it's just a cycle. We're going back to basics. Good fundamentals will always get funded.
Okay, so
That's the
we're
change which is
landing.
really
We're landing in the right place. Kamalika, you know, there was another business within startups. Another business they had was valuation. Now you started not to innovate. The problem is the mindset changed. The idea to innovate, as you say, Israel does. But we shifted, we made startups a business. That we need to valuation go higher and we sell it off. We build one more startup because I have built a 2,000 crore company and I sell it off. It was a vicious circle. Is that vicious circle still a driver of a large piece of what we celebrate?
See, as long as the greater fool theory is alive, this will always be the case, right? And it's going to be there in every cycle because the only way that VCs exit is by passing the buck to the next investor. And that's just it's just a function of the size or the lifetime of the fund. If the lifetime of the fund, and typically most funds are 12 years, within which they have to actually invest within the first 3 years, exit within 8 years of the fund, 8 to 10 years, and then return the money to the LPs, right? And therefore, the moment you have something like this, and it's unrealistic to expect that every business will be able to get to profitability, grow, provide an exit either through an IPO or through an acquisition within that timeline. Therefore, there is a need to find the next person who will provide a secondary exit to the primary investor. As long as this funding structure is alive, this is always going to be the case. This is not going to change. And I actually agree with Ish that there's kind of like a, look back at fundamentals now. But this sentiment is, I've been through 3 economic cycles now, right? It's a bull run followed by a bear run, a bull run followed by a bear run. That never changes. That's
There's a nature of this.
Yeah, it's physics.
No, there's a difference this time. See, I think we have two big trends going on. One is deglobalization. 1990 onwards, there was globalization. That really helped everyone. China coming up, it really lowered the cost. I think that's one. The second thing where US has got really scarred, and while yes, Treasury is giving you close to 6%, everybody's putting money in Treasury, including guys like us. Why should we go and put money? LPs are getting hit very badly today. 2 reasons. In US also, if you see, most of the stock market that has come back last 6 months is 7 or 8 stocks only. So most of the loss-making startups, even which were publicly listed, have not really come back, to their previous level. The second thing which is happening is interest rates in US are not coming down soon, anytime soon. I think that people are not realizing. Last 15 years, we have got addicted to free money. That is ending. So combination of that with deglobalization is going to be a huge reset. And this is a very different cycle because if you take 2000, Fed lowered the interest rates in 2001, same in 2008. Now same did in 2020 COVID. Now they cannot do it. And the other thing is, and I can tell you this, the US public is scarred. US people are not used to inflation. They're just not used to it. So they are scarred. The current policymakers are going to get punished, and the policymakers are very clear. They don't want a repeat of this situation.
Great. I want to bring in Satyajeet's views here. I spoke about valuation. They talked about this back to basics, and the US is a problem not because something is wrong in our ecosystem, but there are global forces at play, and we are blaming the wrong things. How do you respond to it?
I think valuation is a forward-looking multiple. Sure, in when we had a lot of free money, when we had a lot of inflow of money, there was inflation, there was inflated valuations as well, which are getting reset. But it's not that it's going to get reset by a 90% or a 95%, right? Those resets will happen. I think funding will continue going forward because the cycle needs to keep continuing. Good businesses will bring in. And it's not that the India story is over. So let's look at any other developing economy across the world. right? India is the brightest picture out there. It is not that the India story is over. Valuations, corrections, all of these have happened to a large extent. They've not happened to 90%, but I think, again, going forward, things will go in a slightly more streamlined manner, slightly more conservative manner, but I think it will continue on the same path.
So better things are coming to us. Final, I need like 30 seconds from all of you, starting with you, Ish. So what is next for the tech, tech-led startups? What's the next big growth driver for them?
I think GI is one of the things which is on the table for everyone. Yeah, world is going to change up to an extent. More from a perspective that what are the use cases where a person can deploy GI. Everyone is trying to look at the brighter picture. Let's say very unstructured query which is coming to you, unstructured request coming to you. A virtual assistant in case is able to answer that. How much I'm able to automate that part with deep predictability and with right answers. These are very two important factors, right? Have we really achieved that stage? Not really. But have we got something to play with? Definitely yes.
That cuts your business cost also, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, Rohit?
I think we'll see increasing digitization, and in my view, every disruption leads to more progress and changes. So I think that's coming. Obviously, the discipline and the corporate governance part is something India needs to focus on, especially startups, because there's a lot of concern among global investors. Global investors are used to cycles. They are. What they are not used to is lack of corporate governance, Exactly.
Right. Varun, and what is the big myth about the startup world that we have in India?
Myth about startup, that it's easy. That is a myth. That is the biggest myth, that it's easy. I am doing this for 11 years now. One exit, one fundraise. I have seen it, most of it. So people think that it's a 2-year journey, make a product, and then you become a unicorn. That's the biggest myth. It's a damn scary, difficult job to do. So I think that reality check needs to hit in. Coming to the future, what is the future? I think generative AI, for sure. Also, to add to this, 90% of AI companies in India are they are tools, not AIs.
Yeah,
so they have to just rebrand their name.
When you talk to the current bots, they won't understand.
They are
They'll
not
give you,
AIs.
okay, welcome, thank you
They
for
are not AIs.
talking to us, exactly.
Yeah, they don't even use a single model of AI. I am a Delhi College of Engineering Computer Science guy for 13 years now. So I've seen all those AI models which actually being used. Most of the AI companies in India are bogus in that sense. They don't use any AI at the back end. It's just a response based on a search string. That is what it is. But AI is definitely going to change a lot of things. That's the future for sure.
Kamalika, you bet on this as well, that this is going to change the face of the tech-led startups?
I'm going to be like Varun and have a completely different approach to this. I think generative AI is just taking baby steps now, right? And there's a lot of, obviously there's the tech side of things, which it has to mature, but there's also regulatory environments, ethical environments, all of these concerns which will come in to determine how we can use AI, right? And before a lot of these concerns are addressed, you cannot have business models that depend on it, or you're going to have situations like what happened with microfinance, in 2012, right? So essentially, while AI is definitely the future, I think it's at least 10 years out in terms of looking at sustainable business models that can come out of that space. I do believe, however, that the next tech boom in India has got to be for products which are about penetrating the population, getting to tier 2 populations, tier 3 populations, providing convenience, access, exposure to this set, because they are the next wave of consumers. And any entrepreneur who recognizes this curve will actually really kill it in the next 5 to 7 years.
Final words, Satyajeet, what lies next?
I think the fintech industry sees a very bright future going ahead. I think we have about 380 million UPI users, NPCI projects, that this moves on to about 700 million in the next 2 years. I think in India there has always been a very high level of intent but the action has lacked. And I think that stems from multiple factors of convenience. Where do we go? We do not have access. I think the digitalization and democratization of finance that will take place over the next 10 years poses a very, very interesting scenario for us.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. We are done with our time, and if you have questions, you can speak to them offline. Sorry. But yeah, a lot of takeaways: course correction, meritocracy will flourish, funding has not dried up. It's just that the nature of it has changed. So thank you. Can I have a round of applause for these gentlemen?